Tommy and Oz, hope we're all doing really well today. It's Sunday. It's a rare day for an upload, but gives us a chance to churn an extra one out for you lovable lot. If you are new around here, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you want to become a member, link is in the description to do that. We have no new merch, so check out the website for that too. And we're here to discuss the Carlton 10-point grind it was versus GWS. And where do we start? I think there's a lot of ways you can approach this, so we're going to be very consistent. We said we're going to be judging them as a top four side throughout the year. So that would mean in a performance like that, there's a lot of learnings you've got to take. And there's a lot of things that obviously weren't licked to the extent that we expect to see. But I mean, I think the Duke of Wellington probably sums up this game and watching this team probably better than I can. He was a man of a quote, but he famously said, I don't know what effect these men will have upon the enemy, but by God, they frighten me. And they do sometimes, don't they? I mean, let's take the game for what it is. A lot of people last year were giving Collingwood hate for winning tight games. And I think if we're honest, we'd probably take their ability in a tight game last year. Because if we did, St Kilda wouldn't have happened. Hawthorn wouldn't have happened, the back end of that. And Carlton would have easily made finals. It's easy to criticise. I think sometimes very easy. I've done content for a while now. Trust me, being negative is easy views. Trust me, super easy. Requires zero effort on my part if you want me to lay into them. But I think what that showed me there is that's 2 tight wins in a row. There's no doubt in my mind, just from looking at the game from an analytical and a tactical standpoint, Carlton would be 0-3 this time last year if they had the heart and intensity they showed. It was a real scrappy game, and it was an interesting one because it's a long time since we've seen Cripps be this version of Cripps, and it's real nice to see him be the old Cripps that I fell in love with, this workhorse, this intent, this aggressor, but actually have people around him who aren't Mickey Mouse and who can actually back him up. And that was one of the highlights for me. But credit has got to go to GWS here because teams have to negate Carlton. They have to negate Carlton. When you look at where Carlton's strength is around the football, around that contested number, particularly around that clearance, something that we're going to see a few teams this year have to learn on. What they did was really impressive. And let's have a look at that because I'm a firm believer that the best way you learn is from, basically, in my opinion, your inadequacies. I think if you're a real sporting team, you learn from your difficulties, your mistakes. So let's have a look at it. Now, what you'll see here, particularly, and this works around the stoppages, we're just going to use the centre clearance as kind of a guide. But what you found here was really interesting from GWS is they'd done their homework. They'd done their homework. And as the ball was bounced, you found that their wings, which when they played Whitfield there, Kelly also went there, they floated inwards and they created the outnumber. Now, what they tried to do was basically stifle Carlton's handball change, and they did this really, really smartly. This was really impressive. We saw Carlton deploy a very similar thing to Richmond in round 1. Incidentally, where Nankervis had the ascendancy, look at the hit-outs. Carlton had the ascendancy here. And what this does is it causes teams, when you cluster around stoppage and clearance, they have to go a bit more direct. They have to. They can't hit that run and stun. And what they did is, and they found an area here that if Carlton are going to be a top 4 side, they have to learn endeavour. They have to learn taking the game on in a brave format. And this is what you are finding now, the new weakness of Carlton. It's not so much being able to stand up in the fight as this week, last week, and round 1 showed. They can do. There's no doubt now in these 3 games, this small catchment, these boys can step up and hold on, but also more importantly, get the job done. The next thing is adding that next mental layer of bravery. And what you found here is the ball would work its way out when Carlton did it, and they had to bomb it. They had to kick it. We saw a few of them horrible kicks that I hate where you turn, they spin and they just boom the ball in the air. Big Gregor Owen. It looked like watching 1980s Wales in the Five Nations. And it ceded possession. But what was really nice, and I want to just talk about this briefly, was how Carlton then negated it. Now, Carlton had their first score from a defensive chain in this game. So we're talking about transition, and we talked about last week, what the boys are doing. So if we clear this, a structural change. So if you clear this and we look at this now, what the boys did was they moved Adam Chera, particularly in the fourth, and Doc around. Now, this was a great little moment for Carlton because, one, I think Doc is integral to Carlton because we just talked about that there. Now, when they were condensing our midfield, the problem is the midfielders that we're looking for, in my opinion, who are having the ball, Hewitt and Cripps, are very handball happy. And the reason they're handball happy is why we talk about Dow in the VFL. These are integral positions for Carlton's system, particularly Voss. And what Voss is doing is looking for these direct runners. Now, them runners genuinely come from Kennedy or Cripps, who go out the back of the contest and that handball comes up. We get them into space. Chera or Walsh, you see that a bit. Problem is when that's taken away, these guys aren't very good, in my opinion, at getting that 40, 50 metre kick that's needed. And you saw Kelly display this very well for a couple of their goals. Now, why Chera is so important and why when you switch them round is important is partly that kick. Now, you saw quite a lot. Two of the goals, particularly how easy it was to defend against transition. People are criticising Carlton's defensive transition, right? Now, we're going to compliment Carlton and negate them, but we'll use this example first. When Chera was here, what we saw here is genuinely, this could be Cripps, this could be Kennedy, this could be Hewitt, but Hewitt makes this movement when we're in defensive pressure. And it was an easy hit-up kick. Chera likes them easy kicks. When Doc does it, it's that little chip kick. He hits that nice flat kick, gets it there quickly, and then suddenly this zone moves up. This zone moves up. The handball change, you saw it. The Charlie goal was very well worked to get us in that position from this movement, and it's the shift. But by the same token here, right, this is where Carlton were really strong around the clearance because what they did when Chera was there was when the ball came in, he could play it short. But when the ball needed to get forward, he makes the forwards use the work. Doc is very proficient at getting the ball moving. You saw it a few times. He'd take that handball from that Cripps chain. He'd beat his first man and he'd get the ball into here. Now, this is why it's so important. This is how Carlton have got over their defending transition goal. Now, it's a real misinterpretation that Carlton are bad at it because if you actually go back and watch that game, GWS played a textbook way to beat it. So how Carlton do it, and this is, we didn't have a tackle inside 50 till nearly the end of the second. Carlton really struggled with this, right? Really, really struggled with this. But how they look to defend it is they're looking at this forward half here, right, to be really high up the ground. Now, it creates this gap here, but there's a reason, right? And I want you to just take you through the lines. This is full forward. This is half back forward. They're really putting the pressure in. They're trying to get the long kick. Now, Carlton are the number one contested marking side in the comp. There's a reason. People hate that long bomb down the wing. If you're creating a tactic for this side, you want them to kick in traffic less, get the ball aerially more, because that's where their strength is, all around the ground. The wingers, the midfield, the forwards, they're all very high in the marking stats. And then what they do is they like to deploy the halfbacks here. This is your fullback line, right? And they'll probably, and that is where they're trying to condense it. But they're trying to get this kick here, right? Now, this tactic here has been deployed by arguably the greatest side in the competition. They want these kicks here. You'll find that if we were going to do this line perfectly, that the midfield would kind of zone here, right? And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get you to kick out to the width. That's where the tall timber is. It's also where the high half forward backs are going to do their damage. And that's why you see the wings work really hard. The high half forwards in this zone. JSOS being one of them. Now, What happened this week is they took the dangerous kick on GWS, and by heck, Haynes, Kelly, Whitfield, they delivered. And they got this one area for Carlton, which is really, really poor. And it's a dangerous kick, but if you can get it here with accuracy, you are out in droves. And the guys that were here would just simply move to here, right? Now, there was a tactical masterstroke that occurred in this game, right, which where Carlton started to get the ascendancy. And what I want to do is draw the lines. Carlton started to sit back. So Carlton started to bring the lines closer together, right? And they actually had a higher defensive line. And what you found here is Ollie Hollands and Blake Acres came into this area. Instead of being here with the high halfbacks, the halfbacks and the wings started to come here, giving themselves that outlet ball. And you saw that they had to go wider. It's a lot easier to defend if you can get them wide, but you're taking the corridor kick on. And what is really interesting, particularly how they tried to force this position very, very early as well. It's really worth noting that these boys tried to do that from the second. Was a big part of this was Carlton had 20 forward half intercepts. So what they did here was, this is where Carlton's strength is on the clearances, is because they sat up a lot higher, particularly the wings in centre bounce. They were taking marks when the centre bounce happened. Here, they were turning it over. And although that doesn't count as a defensive transition turnover, that is where Carlton are really strong. So that is allowing them to really negate it. So why the defensive transition looks bad, you are going to lose it. And that is because Voss is very, very offensive. Very offensive. And in a way, the Owies injury helped Carlton do that, because Owies, we saw what happens when you play him more defensive. It really does cook it. It really does cook it. So that was a good little bit of a tactic, and something that an adaptation due to injury is impressive, because Jesus, I don't think gets enough kudos this game, but how Jesus worked this game was incredible. And let's take a look at Jesus here. And this is what really impresses me. His average position this week, if you were going this way, was there. So if Carlton are going, let's say, this way towards this goal, his average position was here. And his conduit work, his ability to work up and down the ground, really helps them turn the ball over fast. Now, Carlton averaged turning it over in this area. This is where they got the ball back in that forward half. Like we said, plus 20. Very important that Carlton can turn it over, particularly when it's a plus 20 clearance. It was as their first kick. The high halfbacks are working. What Carlton can do there is, because he's working here and he's so strong in the air, he makes that move. But he's also got something that not many players have at Carlton Football Club, particularly Jack Martin. He brings it to ground to Durden and Motlop. And Motlop and Durden feasted on it. And that is a real delight for me, and something that is going to win us more games than it loses us. But looking ahead, let's look at the game. Big issues for me were Carlton's endeavour. And what I mean by that is there was a lot of times that Carlton would go very, very, very close and then not do the next kick thing. A staggering amount of behinds were rushed behinds. Shots. It's not really. It's about 20 scoring shots in reality. The rest were rushed behinds. So what Carlton have got to do there, and this is so important for Carlton as a football club, is they've got to get the ball in closer. And we found, because we were reacting to that defensive turnover, and this is something that we're going to learn as we get better, and it is a criticism, because they're not always looks for the next kick about 50 out. Some of the other players are guilty of it. Fisher, he'd rather push behind. People see them as set shots. They're meant to be set-up shots. You're meant to be getting that on the square. Mackay and Kerner had to work on two-on-one transition. That is something that is the next development in this club, because that game was high risk, and there is no doubt in my mind this side lost that last year. They worked incredibly hard to turn that round. But I listened to the crowd. The crowd were really good again in the last 10 minutes. The boys we've got to get more industrious with their endeavour, because at times it becomes safe. And as soon as this side start to play safe, play within themselves, that's when games like this happen. And GWS were magnificent, like we say around the stoppages, creating that uncertainty from Carlton. Their offensive style is starting to... It has its negatives. But all in all, it's an ugly win. It's a gritty win. Voss won't be happy with it, because we saw back end of that 10 minutes in the second, the start of that third, our class to their class was apparent. The problem is they didn't finish their chances. When you generate 12, 15, that is poor. And Carlton usually go around the 48% mark, which is around the AFL norm. That should have been 30 points. If in reality that happened, that's what 3 were behind. So that's 6, 12, 18, 24, 28. 28 points. And suddenly you add 28 points to that 38-point win. It looks healthier. That's the next evolution, because the pressure came on the ascendancy there. They didn't have it in their terms where they had the easy ball, which is what they've become accustomed to, because they start to look for that inside run. It's going to be really interesting for me, and it's going to be hard to judge this side until you have Walsh and Kennedy, Hewitt and Cripps playing, because I think between them, that is the perfect combination. And I do like Doc floating through there, because at times this week, when that easy run is taken away, and it was quite oftenly heavily shepherded, you start to see him panic. Big shout out to Nick Newman, though, and I'm sick of where we are as a football team, giving the back line a bit of kudos. But Nick Newman, he probably won us that game. He did, because keeping Toby Green to 1 goal and 5 touches is sensational. And his defensive work and his understanding of where to be, as a lot of the defenders had this week, particularly Sard and him, really helped out. Because if Carlton had lost that fall of the ball, that would have been huge. And their ground ball gets were impressive. But Carlton's ability to be there at front and centre, particularly in that fourth quarter where we saw Motlop really get front and centre of the boys, is a development that needs to keep happening, because you're not always going to get GWS. And I think people have downplayed GWS. They were full strength pretty much. They showed their wiliness. They showed where they are. They are a 12 to 14 side that is going to be able to grind it and make it difficult. And Tom Green gave Cripps some attention. He was holding his hand most of the time. The fact that Patrick Cripps managed to have an impact is a good sign, because I think we bailed ourselves out with a bit of umpire fortune, which I think we deserved after the last couple of years, if we're honest. But also the ability to get this job done, and that can't be understated. I know we want perfection, so do I. But at the end of the day, if we're judging them as a top 4 side, St Kilda doesn't happen last year. This game has to go this way. Collingwood at times, Richmond managed to drag them down to their level because of injuries. They were very impressive, Richmond, in Friday's game. The fact they dragged Collingwood down, they knew how to beat them. Dimmitt had a masterclass of making it a little bit ugly, taking away clean ball. Carlton, this game, they had to work overtime in their clearance, their contested work to get the job done. And that is a plus for me. There's a long way to go. And I think back at North Melbourne this week, at Marvel, perfect conditions, they have learned a lesson in a very ugly way. And that is a huge dub. I'm not of the school of you learn when you lose. I think too many people, particularly in modern day sport, lick their wounds a bit. It wasn't perfect, right? There's a lot to work on. And that is exciting. That is exciting for me. What is exciting for me as a content creator is we're at the stage now we're looking for perfect wins, when 2 years ago we were just looking for any fucking win. So there's a lot to build on. It's ugly. It's not a game that I've enjoyed watching back twice. A lot of rudimentary errors from both sides that I wouldn't expect to see. But some nice little signs that we're starting to get a bit imaginative. That That Chera Doc move definitely won us the game. We saw it in pre-season. It looked very nice. And it's nearly there. It's nearly there. We're a lot closer to whatever we're trying to find than we were before. 4 points is 4 points. They bank up. Not so worried about the percentage at this stage, because if you are going to win a flag, I ain't sneaking in the 8. I want points on the board. And this last year, if they could have done this to St Kilda when they were the better side, that's huge. That's huge, because the kicking was woeful this week. But next week, let's see it, because we still haven't seen the complete performance. I think we're about 75% the offensive capabilities as we were last year. I'm waiting for that to click in. I've got a feeling that when this side click in, it's going to be really good, because I think if you look properly and close enough, the signs of development that Collingwood are getting praised for with their centre clearance work are there. The big question mark was us. Could we win ugly? Could we grit it out? Could we grind it? And so far, we've seen 3 occasions that Carlton have grinded to a result of some form, which is a positive. Once it starts to come into gear, I can't help feel that Walsh and Kennedy are very integral to this midfield there, because Hewitt and Cripps have to work overtime. I think Kennedy, there's a reason Carlton haven't won without him. His ability to be the only player in that midfield who can play defensive and offensively and be tough, I think shouldn't be understated. Going to be a tough one this week if Always is injured, because I think the 3 smalls is integral. We will do our VFL wrap tomorrow. But until next time, look after yourself, be kind. Palm out.